already made up their mind. It was just a matter of how they bludgeoned him.
For every American who cares about women's health, about protections for people with pre-existing conditions, about civil rights, labor rights, LGBTQ rights, environmental rights, now is the time to fight. Now.
Now I'm going to withhold my consent for this nominee or any other nominee.
President Trump could have nominated someone last night, not off the narrow list of those pre-cleared, pre-approved by far-right organizations like the Heritage Foundation and Federalist Society. We could be here today discussing a nominee who was potentially someone with a wide-open record, someone who might command a bipartisan majority.
We are going to look into what went on and what assurances were made that brought this name to the top of the list.
Judge Kavanaugh should not get the benefit of the doubt. He bears the burden of proof to convince all of us and the American people that he can indeed be a fair and objective justice.
I'm here with sadness to say, Judge Kavanaugh, you don't belong in this building as a justice. Judge Kavanaugh, you should not be serving in this building as a Supreme Court justice. Judge Kavanaugh is your worst nightmare.
Should any of us be surprised by what has been unfolding here? Remember, 3 weeks ago, Kavanaugh's nomination, it looked pretty certain, despite so many embarrassing theatrics from people like Cory Spartacus Booker and Senate Democrats. Well, Kavanaugh sailed through his hearings unscathed. And at the 11th hour, what did Dianne Feinstein do? She drops a bomb. An anonymous sexual assault allegation. This hadn't happened in 40 years in this man's adult life until, what, 12 days ago. She made no mention of this allegation during her lengthy private meetings with Kavanaugh. She made no mention during his public hearing. She had the information back in July. Now, remember, Professor Ford said she didn't want to go public. Her confidentiality, privacy could have been protected, but that's not how it went down. Now, there were no calls for an FBI investigation then, no inquiries made back in July. In fact, these claims were not sent to any law enforcement body for weeks. They sat on it. And come to find out, at the very same time, yes, the ranking member, Dianne Feinstein, was actually meeting and interviewing Judge Kavanaugh alone. Our office was secretly advising Professor Ford on what attorneys to hire. She ended up hiring a pretty radical left attorney that said terrible things about Paula Jones and defended the creep Al Franken. Now, Dianne Feinstein should be ashamed of herself tonight. These dirty political tactics surrounding an alleged sexual assault victim and a Supreme Court nominee, what we have witnessed is not only disgusting and repulsive, it is beneath the office that she serves. Every good, decent Californian should be appalled by the actions of this unethical senator. After pronouncing the anonymous allegation against Kavanaugh, Professor Ford's name and story, well, it quickly leaked to the press. Then she felt she was going to tell her story herself. Up until that point, there were only two parties who knew about Professor Ford's allegation, congressional Democrats and Professor Ford herself. If you do the math, it's pretty obvious. It was clearly, you have an alleged survivor of sexual assault, despite what she said were her status wishes to remain private. And Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, well, he's blaming Professor Ford tonight for the leak. Take a look.
As best I can tell, Dr. Ford had told sufficient people in her circle who might have told others that press in California began to ask her questions and follow her around. And the story then came through the Washington Post, where she had originally, Dr. Ford had originally, as she testified yesterday, left a tip on the hotline, and the reporter followed up with her ultimately. So as best I can tell, that's how it all became public, through those two avenues.